So hello again to the afternoon session of this conference. We will now have one more keynote, a keynote by Professor Darius Kučinskas, who is a professor at the Technical University in Kaunas, as you certainly all know, and who has worked before at the Čiurlionis Museum. He has also been a long time in the US, where he had a Fulbright guest research, and also at the Čiurlionis University in Krakow. Darius Kučinskas has published two monographs on Čiurlionis, one on the genesis of his piano works, and another one which is the catalogue of the works of Čiurlionis. And he will now talk to us on musical philology. He is an expert of the musical sources, the sketches, the manuscripts of Čiurlionis, and he will talk about the current state of archive of Čiurlionis sources. So the floor is yours, please.
Laba diena. Hello, everybody. I will decided to speak in English because I know that many of you also understands. And my experiments with Čiurlionis started about 36 years ago, when I first time moved to Čiurlionis Museum to see for Čiurlionis music manuscript, and after that I stayed there for 10 years. Well, my experience is related with textology, music textology, editing, publishing, and maybe it is another aspect we can also turn our ideas speaking about Čiurlionis. Well, I would like to speak you about some questions: archive, publishers, editors, editions, and catalogs or systems of systematization, types of systematization. Really, when we speak about Čiurlionis, when we're considering him about art synthesis, about other developments in art, we should base all our decisions on the manuscripts, on what he wrote, what he really composed. And maybe a short story about the archive, when the archive was formed and by whom it was formed. What we know, that today we have the basic institution, it is National Kaunas Čiurlionis Art Museum, where all manuscripts of Čiurlionis, paintings, drawings, and music manuscripts. It's the base institution in Lithuania and in the world. Next archive in Lithuania, we have also the State Archive of Literature and Art, where are fund of Čiurlionis and fund of Landsbergis, and also a library of Vilnius University, where we have a fund of Jadvyga Čiurlionytė, sister, youngest sister of composer, where also there are some music manuscripts of Čiurlionis. Abroad, we have the only institution, it's United States Lithuanian Research Center, which for many decades was in Chicago, but now it's moved to Lemont. And you see here is a small building in Lemont, where are really a lot of music archives of Lithuanian diaspora in the United States. Also, they have one manuscript of Čiurlionis. The story how the archive was formed, it's very interesting, and it's really represents some political changes, some economical changes, and also how the archive was formed also represent our history, music history. What we see is that in 1922, when was established the first museum for Čiurlionis, first paintings were obtained from family to museum. So together with paintings, it was received 11 vignettes. It's graphical pictures with music scores. Next step was 1936, when it was a very important moment when a museum and state bought all manuscripts, music manuscripts from family. It means from Sofija Čiurlionienė and Danutė Čiurlionytė. There were scores for symphony compositions, the scores of piano compositions, chord manuscripts. So the main manuscripts appeared and were obtained into museum in 1936. And then we see that only 1 or 2 manuscripts were obtained in the long history. And year 1969 is also important because family decided to shift other manuscripts they had in at their home. It was 11 manuscripts, mostly study books, about study books from harmony, from polyphonic, from Leipzig, from Warsaw, but also important notebooks of other compositions. And the last most important year was 1980, when another sister, Valerija Čiurlionytė Karužienė, who was a head of Čiurlionis department in Čiurlionis Museum, she also had at her own home many manuscripts, and she decided to shift to museum. So, okay, and together with original autographs, museum received also copies made by contemporaries, which are really also important. And what we see that together with original manuscripts in 1936, 69 and 80 years, we received also very important copies, sometimes which are present as compositions which we have now original manuscripts. And what also is important that in year 1990s, museum decided to reorganize their archives to separate Čiurlionis all manuscripts from general list of documents to separate section, to separate department, and I was happy I was invited to do this work. Well, in other institutions, in other archives, what we see that in Lithuania we have also as I said, it was a few manuscripts in Lithuanian Archive of Literature and Art, and also copies. Chronologically, maybe here. Well, chronologically, we can see the graphic, how the whole archive formed. What we see that there were gaps, really like a silence. Years 1950s, year 90s or 2000. So there not a gaps, but really it was a silence because nobody shifted manuscripts to museum. And what is very interesting sometimes, this is example of one copy preserved in the United States with a very interesting text on the other side of manuscripts. As you see, it is a Fugeta in B minor of year 1904, and this is written. Well, in Lithuanian it is Fugeta nebuvo niekur spausdinta ir man nurašė nabašninko Čiurlionės brolis Jonas. So, Fugeta was never published, and this copy is made by dead man Čiurlionis' brother Jonas. So, very important. And comparing with other manuscripts what we have in museum, we discover that this copy is quite little differences. They have differences. What we have about 75 manuscripts in archives in Lithuania and abroad, but what we lost, it's also very sad that we lost many manuscripts, and I calculated 54 manuscripts. What are important among them? It's scores, there are scores we lost, for example, Sonata number 1, 4 parts, fair copy. De Profundis, the score, fair copy. String quartet in 4 parts. As we know, the 4th part is lost at all. Polonaise, I guess it was dedicated and presented to Michał Ogiński in Plungė. Overture he composed in Leipzig, he finished, but we lost. Also, the fair copies of cycles, piano cycles, Marios, Dla Halki, also the song Zadumalise Anelį. These copies were finished, and I guess they were presented to the to the persons to whom they were dedicated, for example, for Galina Volman or to Stefania Podgorska Okolov. Where I know, from where source I know that it were finished and lost. For example, we have the title on one page. It was preserved together with the clavier or with the draft for the overture, and it was described as one manuscript in museum. But when I started to work with manuscripts, I discovered that this page is from the score, which not survived. So what is the text here? That overture, and in brackets it's written, sketch started on January 25 in Leipzig, 1902, finished on February 5, and orchestration finished on March 12. So we know exact dates when Čiurlionis composed, when he orchestrated, when he finished, when the score was prepared, but it is lost for today. It's very pity, yes. Well, about music compositions, if we speak about compositions written in these manuscripts, we recognize that most of them are unfinished, unedited, with gaps in its texture, difficult to reach, missing alterations, unpublished, and of course lost. And unfinished compositions, we can say that this not finishing, the status of unfinishing is sometimes only one bar is missing at last. The final bar is, or final measure is missing. Or maybe it can be written up till recapitulation, up till reprise. Sometimes only left or right hand is completely written because Čiurlionis composed in horizontal, not vertical style. Some parts or some sketches are developed, but we don't know how to finish or to continue. And sometimes there are only fragments with title, with date, but these fragments contain only 1 or 2 or 3 bars. Well, for example, how Čiurlionis did a clean copy or fair copy from the draft or from the black copy. Sometimes, having now additional paper, he changed writing material, he changed from pencil to ink, and he wrote on the already existing manuscript. So what we see here, it's a manuscript of year 1898, that the background is written on the with pencil, with black pencil, and it's written in ink with some corrections, with some changes. Sometimes we have examples when Čiurlionis erased one part of first version and written a new version. But our researchers, our musicologists, for example, Professor Vytautas Landsbergis, deciphered what was written at first, and so we have 2 versions of this prelude. Here in up is the prime version, and down is second version of the same prelude. An example of the music when Čiurlionis wrote completely all thematic material. Here is in right hand. This march or elegy or piece, I don't know how to title because it is without title. It is written as included in Landsbergis catalog as a march. So here is only right hand with all thematical material, but not finished, not reconstructed, and not printed up till today. Manuscript from United States. What is interesting here, that the cover page we see with some symbols. We remember symbols, very similar symbols or signs. We saw in a letter to Brother Povilas, where Čiurlionis explained that these symbols have a meaning. It's ABC. So Gražina already discovered many things here. And it's interesting that he used also the signature, musical signature. And here also, if we insert letters instead of these symbols or signs, we also can read that it's signature, Čiurlionis, in the center of the page, of the cover page. And what is on the page 11? When I asked to send me copies from the United States, they sent me a copy of this manuscript instead of page 11. And I asked why you didn't do a copy of this page. The archive said, it's empty page. Yes, we cannot see nothing maybe here. But when I moved to United States, I opened this page and I saw there were music, but it is also erased. Erased. What music is? So I identified there was the third voice of one folk song harmonized, arranged by Čiurlionis. So sometimes empty pages are not so empty. And for example, a good example for musicologists who wish to publish music. So, how looks manuscripts? How looks Čiurlionis drafts? It's quite difficult to understand at all. What is here written? Because he starts his music not from the beginning of page, but from the second stave. Yes, from the second stave system, we see that he identified clefs, keys, and time signature, so the start is from the second system. And he goes up to the end of page. On other page is already other music, so he returned back to the first stage and finished music. Nevertheless, he also rebarred his music, so when you wish to publish this fuguetta, it's quite difficult to understand, first of all, what it was written. Another example was also unpublished up till last year. It is a song which was in the catalogue of Landsbergis was indicated as Zadumalise Anelė, according to the first words, but it was not clear who is the author of the words, how the composition should go, what other words, because words in manuscript were written by, in episodes, not exactly. And we have one researcher, Daniele Buccio from Italy, who was quite very interested in that composition, and he discovered the source of the lyrics, the author, and he reconstructed this composition. So up till today, we have the process of reconstruction and publishing of Čiurlionis. Well, we can speak about Cantata de Profundis. We have now survived the score, original, but we have survived the copy of made by his contemporary composer, Juozas Tallat Kelpša. What is very interesting that looking even to the copy of this score, we can identify, if we know, of course, that all these signs on this manuscript are from different years. For example, this stamp in the corner, the page number, are written and put on the manuscript in 1936. New number, GM3, it's written by me, sorry, but I was needed to write something also because it was an inventory of manuscripts. It was made in 1990s. But other marks, for example, dynamic and the commentary in pencil is written in different years by different persons. So sometimes going for editing, or thinking about future publishing of Čiurlionis music, we should first of all to identify all signs we see on the manuscripts, and we should really decide what is music, what is belong to the composition, what not belong to the composition. It's a typical question for textology work. Well, and the publishers. After archive, we should shift to the publishers. Who were publishers of Čiurlionis music? As we see, we had already a history of more than 100 years of Čiurlionis music publishing. And the first publishers were, of course, in Warsaw, where he lived on that time. It was a journal Meloman, we know that. Then it was, of course, Stasys Šimkus, but I would like to stress on to focus on the Jonas Petronis. It's a unique case in our history that one person who was not a musician, who only by accident was involved in music publishing and music selling in trademark, So Čiurlionis was really involved in the process of Čiurlionis music publishing. Petronis was involved in Čiurlionis music publishing, and he knew personally Jadvyga Čiurlionytė, Valerija Karužienė, Juozas Gruodis, Vytautas Bacevičius, and other editors like Landsbergis and Misiukevičius and String Quartet, others. So he acted as a publisher and editor about few decades. Well, and two maybe most important persons who really served as a publishers for Čiurlionis music. The first was Vincas Palukaitis, who initiated the songbook Vieversėlis, and Jonas Petronis. Jonas Petronis started his publishing during war years. It was a complicated history, as he told me. It was, many changes, but after communication with Jadvyga Čiurlionytė bring manuscripts she was already prepared before Second World War, so they decided to publish a series of Čiurlionis piano music. Unfortunately, the war stopped this process and only 2 scores were published. But later, after 1990s, Petronis re-established his publishing process, and he really did many important things because he published piano music, choir music, symphony music, quartet music. Really, we can say that he published everything for the first time. If we look at the geography, where the publishers were and where is Čiurlionis music published, we say that it is published only in few cities. Of course, Vilnius, Kaunas, then St. Petersburg during Soviet time, and also in Soviet time it was Warsaw, Krakow, Leipzig, and that's all. Only in 2011 it was a chance to publish 1 score in Tokyo, in Japan, and other scores, only few scores for piano, were published in Chicago by a Lithuanian community. Well, looking to the chronology or timeline of music publishing, what we see that Čiurlionis music publishing in Lithuania really started about 15 years after his death. Previously, it was a few scores published in Poland. And this process was not systematical, was not normal, as I can say, that it is related with anniversaries. Time from time we commemorate Čiurlionis' birthday, and as we see, sometimes we have more and more published editions. So year 2020, I think it was also very successful because we have more than 25 editions published of Čiurlionis music. Who were editors? Because Čiurlionis edited and published only few compositions. Editors, of course, were musicians who performed his music. And what is most interesting, that most of these editors were performing, editing, and recording his music. Of course, Jadvyga Čiurlionytė, Stasys Šimkus lived in time where music recording was quite difficult, so we have only their editions. But mainly all pianists who edited Čiurlionis music, they also performed and recorded their music, his music. Well, the main editors who really did most important impact in Čiurlionis music, in spirit of Čiurlionis music, is once more Stasys Šimkus, Jadvyga Čiurlionytė, and Professor Vytautas Landsbergis. Well, if we see to the types of editions, what type of edition it was prepared, it was published, we can see that about 90 years, Čiurlionis editions were on the performance edition style. It means that the first aim was to edit in such a way that performer can understood how to play this music. Because as we know, Čiurlionis left mostly drafts, mostly scores without any indications of dynamic, tempo, other maybe things needed for performance. And we see that about 100 years we published only performance editions, prepared by different editors. The only educational edition was published in 1981. And later, what we see is that from year 2000, urtext and facsimile editions started, and now already critical and digital editions started. First music editions. As we know, Čiurlionis published himself only 3 compositions, 3 piano pieces, Nocturne, Prelude, Mazurek, and also the set of folk songs for schools, it is Vieversėlis. When we compare manuscript and the first edition, it's very interesting that in addition we can find all necessary signs for performance. So Professor Landsbergis asks question, who did edition? Was it made by Čiurlionis, or it was did by Meloman editor, Meloman publisher, who maybe indicated tempo, dynamics, slurs, and fingering and other things needed for performance? The question is without answer because we have only one manuscript, clean copy, but without any signs, and we don't know what manuscript Čiurlionis gave for the publisher. Maybe it was edited, because we know that we have only 3 manuscripts completely edited by Čiurlionis, and in these manuscripts we find all necessary signs for performance. So if we can think that Čiurlionis was thinking about performer, and he was felt necessary to include all things for performer. Well, but performing editions of other editors like Stasys Šimkus, Vytautas Landsbergis, Jadvyga Čiurlionytė, we see all of them added necessary signs for performance. It's interesting to follow Professor Landsbergis because he edited Čiurlionis music for 50 years already, and we can see that it was also some progress in the editing style or editing methodology. First of all, what he introduced to write petite notes in corner up in the left corner. It means that he separated original manuscript and original music text from notes and other signs he inserted, as an editor inserted. For performer, it's quite important because we obviously see connection where manuscript finished and where his editor's added notes continues. In year 1985, Landsbergis went further and he included brackets and also crossing signs. It means crossing slurs, crossed dynamic signs. It is, I can say that it is also the next level of the music editing for critical editions, going for critical editions. But surprise for me was when we received edition of 2004, which repeated last year, where Landsbergis refused these additional signs, brackets or crossing signs, and he really represent once more his own personal performance edition. So in the last editions we have very valuable, very important for us researching music performance, but it is already performance edition. As for educational edition, yes, he also included pedalization, pedals, fingering, other necessary things, and it was for many years the only edition for schools. Up till this year, when I asked my wife, well, you are a teacher, why not to prepare these compositions for pupils? And she really worked along, and what we have now, 2 sets of Čiurlionis music edited and really selected for pupils with all necessary signs. Going to urtext and facsimile editions, for the first time in 2000, it was published Fuga with a score in urtext and with a facsimile. It was needed because Fuga in 2000 already was published for 8 or 9 times, I don't remember, but all these publications were different, and when competition, international competition for Čiurlionis was organized, performers were confused which edition we should play, because all editions are different. So it was necessary to publish urtext edition. And what we see, the fuga. The fuga really is a question for us, because we have two different manuscripts, and I say that there are two versions, early versions or first versions and second version. First version was thought and composed like introduction to opera which were thought together with Sophia. And it was with introduction, first bars introductions, as we see here, with a little different final bars and other changes. And even in the theme, in the subject, what we see, in upline it is first manuscript, down is second manuscript. And if we compare the third bar or fourth bar, we see that in the first manuscript, second note is very clear, it's C. But what you see in the second manuscript, second note, for many decades it was recognized and deciphered as B note, and it was played with a B sound. And even musicologist Antanas Venckus did a huge research on this, basing on calculation of intervals and improving. And he conclusion was that Čiurlionis was developing psychological augmentations and other things based with this B note. But when Professor Landsbergis decided to publish this fugue with C, in 1975, it was really a big discussion in community, of musicological community, really what music we should play and what it means. Other things, it's not clear up till today, because Čiurlionis noted not very clear this place. In two manuscripts, we see that he a little changed writing, and it is also were deciphered differently by in different editions and different editors. The bar 38, famous bars, there is not finished, because in the first manuscript, Čiurlionis did a new bar measures, and the page ends, and he turned this page, and music goes further. In second manuscript, he also discovered that he didn't compose the second part of the bar, but he left empty. Sometimes editors try to fill in this empty part. But for the going for the Urtext edition, I guess it is not needed any additional notes here. And the final bar, we see comparing two manuscripts that the final bar in the first manuscript is very simple, with intonation close to symphonic poem in the forest, when the second version is more complicated and not so clear, illusions and associations with other compositions. So my decision was that there are two versions, and it should be two versions published separately. Well, and now what we have, it is this year or last year, it was published, it was a start of complete edition of all works of Čiurlionis, started by Music Academy, and I congratulate really my colleagues who doing that, because it's really a huge work, and it is already necessary, it's already time to do that, to take all music into one and to edit under one methodology. But this score previously was published in different versions, as we see. Even in 1956, it was for the first time published like a piano reduction. And it was edited not by Lithuanians, but Soviet musicologists. Only in 1975, when we celebrated Čiurlionis' 100 years anniversary, we have published the score. After 25 years, it was score and parts. And once more, after 25 years, we have once more the score published. Yes, 5 minutes. Okay, and digital scores. Only last year we finished one project together with colleagues, a digital edition for Čiurlionis piano music. Well, it's an internet database where we can go to the compositions. Yes, let's start. We try to show you. We can select index system. Yes, for example, my D key number 60, yes. And what we see, here you can find, yes, please, the score. It's already edited, but we can also mark the redakciniai skirtumai, galbūt aukščiau truputį. Yes, redakciniai skirtumai. It shows all necessary signs added in other color. And also you can see manuscripts, for example. Well, okay, here it's a possibility to play. Shortly. And of course you can see manuscripts in the tape. Yes, you can zoom, you can compare. If you don't like prepared edition, you can see here, you can compare, you can decide what is better for you. And of course previous editions. All previous editions are also put in this database. And I guess that this database helps future performers to organize, to prepare their own interpretation. Okay, we can return back to the presentation. Yes, next. Okay, next. And of course, systematization. Questions maybe for contemporary our community. How much we need new systematization or organization systems, because what we see that there are 5 systems already today. We have opus numbers of Čiurlionis, opus numbers of Jadwiga, numbers of Valeria, numbers of Vytautas Landsbergis, and my numbers, and I know Music Academy also wish to introduce a new system of numbering. In my catalog, which is published already last year or 2, it is everything is organized in under one system. Of course, there are manuscripts, compositions, other music materials. You can find many additional information and description of composition. It's very typical like other catalogs. And for the final questions, maybe for discussions, how many new editions we still need, or we do need, and what types? Who will do the new editions and editorial work? Where is a new generation? And how many new systems of music organization do we need? Answering for these questions, we should remember that manuscripts are the foundation of all subsequent research and interpretation. All research begins with a careful reading of the manuscripts, and all editorial interpretations arise from inattentional or misunderstanding of the manuscript. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this fascinating overview on the manuscripts and the edition history of Čiurlionis works, and also for the insights in the new Gesamtausgabe. I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions.
Okay. Well, when we not finished composition, we do our own input. So sometimes we should write co-author. Of course, we should finish, if it is possible to finish. But if it is not clear how to finish, you became like an author. So Čiurlionis and somebody should be noted. Database is open for everybody now. On internet you can find all manuscripts, so you can decide to finish or not to finish.
How many works unfinished?
About 40%.
Please.
Thank you very much, Darius. That was fascinating. It's wonderful to hear that information, which I think I knew 50% of this at the best, so that's great. I just wanted to say something about the general question of the earlier editions, because there was a tendency in other European music cultures to reject such earlier editions in favor of what would be called an urtext. But my own work, when I'm not here, is in 19th century performing editions, and these are of enormous historical value. So I just wanted to point out basically that sometime someone will be very interested in how Landsbergis played, how Jagvila edited, because these are still valid texts. They're not being thrown away. in favor of a new, clean, so-called clean edition. They have value of their own.
Yes, I agree. Yes, I agree. Because performers and researchers really do their own input into interpretation of music, and their discoveries, they understand of manuscript of composer, sometimes really extend our knowledge. And yes, we should include also input of the performers, because sometimes they suggest more like we see in manuscript.
So there was one last question.
So, thank you, Darius, for the very comprehensive presentation. You have shown nicely the three phases of Landsbergis editions.
Yeah.
The second one was going clearly to the to this critical edition, and then he stopped. He came back.
Yeah.
One of the 3-4 times that I spent at his home, 3, 4, 5 hours, I made him exactly this question. And the answer that I took that maybe will help you to understand what happened is that he told me, well, since 2000, something like this, when I feel that I need to add something to Čiurlionis, then it is Čiurlionis. So there's nothing more complicated. It's just this. Yeah. This is the answer that I got.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you very much once again.